Amen. Well, in some ways, this festival of the year, church year, is not one of the easiest for me, although I've come to appreciate it quite deeply. I mean, I grew up as a Protestant in a household that was Reformation to the end. And anything that even resembles Roman Catholicism was an anathema to my parents. After all, I started school and lived in Northern Ireland, where religious differences were all mixed up with sectarian violence. Truth was elusive. For most of my early life, I was burdened with this bias. And I think it's only in my later adult years that I've begun to appreciate the best qualities of that part of the Church Universal. After all, the distinction between Protestant and Catholic in the Reformation was quite untidy for years and was very muddled at various stages of the Reformation. People would change sides, literally, to save their life. I don't know if you've read any of the novels by Hilary Mantel, Wolf Hall, and Bring Up the Bodies, two very important and significant historical novels, but based on the life of Cromwell in the middle of the Reformation, which gives a particular insight into the life of Henry VIII as well. And it was all pretty confused. I mean, Henry VIII was Catholic one day, Protestant the next. He just didn't know. And of course, whatever the king said or wherever the king went carried a lot of weight. Both sides of my family were originally French Huguenot, which were Protestant most of the time, although they too, to survive, switched sides. This was in the late 1700s. Not very long ago, when we were visiting the crypt in York Minster, I discovered a chalice that was owned by Cardinal Mercier, clearly a Catholic relative. I didn't tell my parents. Clearly on the other side. So all of this to say that a feast day called Christ the King, or maybe the more Anglican reign of Christ, for many years felt kind of foreign to me, distant, if not wrong. But my adult journey, thankfully, has seen me looking at and evaluating more deeply and more carefully those early biases, partly getting to know Catholic brothers and sisters in Christ as well. And it has meant that I've been challenged to embrace some aspects of my faith life that perhaps seem more Catholic. No longer, for instance, does prayer have to consist of words. As I grew up in a Calvinist tradition, you always had to pray with words. You had to explain things. You had all of that. And quite interestingly now, and it's not surprising considering I'm a deep introvert, that I'm quite happy to listen silently and contemplate the beauty and wonder of God. That's prayer for me as well. And I, don't have to explain everything the way I had to. I mean, I couldn't be baptized unless I could explain baptism. Well, is there a way to explain baptism? Or is it in fact a kind of mystery? So I'm prepared to embrace more mystery in my life than probably my childhood heritage permitted, even in Eucharist as well. It's fine and wonderful to explain what we can know, but we don't know it all. What do we know and understand about how God is present in these sacraments? Very difficult. So it is that the reign of Christ now finds deep meaning in my life and kind of restores an aspect of my Lord that would be sorely lacking if it were not part of my faith understanding now. The enthroned Christ is too important to omit, even if it feels more remote than the comfortable human Jesus walking the pathways and hillsides of Palestine. Now, having said that, I have to confess to you that I do find the imagery and language of the book of Revelation still difficult to understand and appreciate. It's a bit like the superheroes section of the Bible. I keep thinking it should be a comic part. It should have drawings attached to it. My grandchildren would love it if they read it. It is in the syntax of courts and kings, and really is no longer familiar as language of our time. I don't really know how easy it is for us to relate to a Jesus enthroned in such regal splendor, attended by crowds of angels. Oh, we talk about it, but do we really understand and accept it? We actually can sing quite easily, Jesus is Lord, in church. We probably do it all the time. But do we actually grasp its meaning in its full resurrection significance? Do we truly see ourselves bowing down before Jesus' throne? Do we see the throne room of heaven as our home, our kingdom? I once worked in a parish, not to be named, with a woman and several others who were trying to do a ministry statement of the congregation's life. And it was really hard going. And we got to the word worship, and I thought, that's probably an okay thing for us to be doing in the church. We could say that we are a worshiping community. And she got a kind of frown on her face. And I thought, oh, Lord, what does this mean? He said, I'm not very comfortable with the word worship. It's like you have to bow down to something. Yes. I just think it's hard for us to bow down. When John received his dream on the island of Patmos, it was into a kind of world where the Christians were living under the terror of the Emperor Domitian, and there was great persecution. And I think that that's one of the reasons the book of Revelation is actually in the text. It's to remind those early suffering Christians and give them a word of encouragement. And us as well, actually, because I think it's an exhortation for us who are quite happy with the status quo, the comfortable pew, to realize that God is about something much larger, much bigger, and more cosmic. Whether we realize it or not, there does exist a struggle between kingdoms that surround us and involve us. And that's all through Revelation. It's a kind of warfare. It sees each of us as a prize and seeks to enlist us. It's the language of C.S. Lewis and Screwtape Letters, the ways to trick Christians and to deflect them from being the good people God means them to be. And I'm not kind of the person that sees devils under every pew, but I do think there is a struggle abroad in society and in the world between good and evil. You don't have to read very many pages of last week's newspaper to understand that there's a struggle. And even in North America, although it's a struggle that is subtle in our time, it's nevertheless significant. We're about to enter the season of Advent, and we'll feel again the pressure of trying to maintain the priority of the incarnation amid the din of rampant consumerism and the celebrating without knowing the reason in which our culture seems to revel. In fact, it started before the end of November, if you're in any stores. So it's important that we integrate an appreciation for the enthroned Christ, because that is where the reign of Christ originates. The throne of heaven is the only logical place for the resurrected Christ after the initiative of the incarnation. It is Christ's home. It is also where our hope resides. Hope for the complete unfolding of a new creation. Hope for our eternal home with God. We may feel we're caught up in the chaos of this age now, but chaos will not frustrate God's ultimate sovereign intentions for us. So, as foreign as it may seem to talk of the end times and the reign of Christ, it is nevertheless our destiny as children of the light. So we better get comfortable with what it means. I had the pleasure in my last year at Wycliffe of introducing Dallas Willard as he received an honorary doctorate from Wycliffe College. And he has died this last year, actually. And I have to say, I was just overwhelmingly impressed by his faith and by his simplicity, housed in the middle of a brilliant mind. So I want to share with you some things that he has said. It will be a bit of a précis, so it's Dallas, not me, although I agree with it. And it's from a book called Renovation of the Heart. He says this: according to the biblical picture, the function of human history is to bring forth an immense community of people from every nation and tribe and tongue and people, who will be a kingdom of priests under God, and who for some period of time in the future will actually govern the earth under him. They will also be beyond that reign and with him in the eternal future of the cosmos, forever and ever. These people will, together as a living community, that's us, you know, form a special dwelling place for God. It will be one that allows his magnificence to be known and gratefully accepted by all of creation through all of the ages. So now we're talking in some detail about the nature of Christians and the nature of the church. And I think it's a helpful thing for us to reflect on our lives, our faith, and our experience and see, is that us? Because as children of the light, it's supposed to be. So he does it in certain categories, and I'm going to go through them one at a time, just so you know. He speaks of the children of light in terms of a thought life. He says their thought lives focus on a God who is never out of their minds. Because our minds are centered upon God and oriented with reference to him, all other good things are also welcome there. That's the mind of a child of light. Feelings, he says. The emotional lives of these children of light, their feelings, are characterized by love. They love lots of good things and they love other people. They love their life and who they are. They are thankful even for the hard things. Because of what they've learned about God, they are confident and hopeful and do not indulge thoughts of rejection, failure, and hopelessness, because they know better. Sound familiar yet? The will. He says, further, their will is habitually attuned to doing what is good and right. These are people who do not think first of themselves and what they want, and they really care very little, if at all, about getting their own way. Sounds like the church, doesn't it? The body, he says, their bodies too have come over to the side of their will to do good. Consequently, we do not see them always being trapped by what their tongue, facial expressions, eyes, hands, and so on have already done before they can think. They instinctively avoid the paths of temptation. This is a tough one for me because I show everything on my face. When I taught high school, students would come up to me and say, Sir, are you mad with us? And I was somewhere else, but somehow I was showing negative things. In social relations, they are completely transparent. Because they live in goodness, they have no use for darkness, and they desire real contact or fellowship with others. Because of their confidence in God, they do not try to manipulate and manage others. Church? They do not go on the attack or the hunt, intending to use or to hurt others. Significantly, they are completely non-condemning and will not participate in evil. That's quite an array, isn't it? It seems to me it's a long way from our level of achievement in the church. We sometimes, I think, are dim children of light. Finally, these are the features of life that well up out of the soul that is at home in God. Their lives are sourced deeply. Excuse me. These qualities are not things that the children of light are constantly trying to do, gritting their teeth and carrying on. It's just their nature. Well, I have to say I find all of that description both true and very humbling, because I really know I'm far from that. But I want to be like that. I hope you do as well. If we are able to grow in these ways, then the reign of Christ will be like second nature to us. Nothing to be worked for or striven for, is that a word? But nevertheless, it will come out of us. It'll be the way we see everything. It is then that we are welcome in the throne room of heaven. It will be then that Jesus is fully Lord of our lives. Amen.